Talking about government revenues, let's now turn our attention to our discussion of the day. And to discuss tax and revenue generation, we have in the studio Chris Kaka, microeconomic policy analyst. You're welcome to Business Express.
Thank you for having me here.
Beautiful. You just had the intention by the Bureau of Statistics to rebase some key macroeconomic indicators there. So what do you make of that move? And how important is it in repositioning the economy?
Okay, thank you very much. There's really nothing wrong with rebasing an economy. I think we've done it before in this country. It helps to position things and put them in proper context. Except that the unfortunate thing for us right now is the timing at which we're doing it and the kind of signals such a outcome of that particular rebasing will begin to present to the world. It's going to be obvious when it is done that it will elevate the position of Nigeria, perhaps within the African Union. You perhaps may be hearing that we might become then one of most developed economies within the African Union, in the African continent, as it were, when the realities on ground are beginning to show you a different thing. For me, doing that at the moment is like trying to actually cover up certain things that are actually going on ground at the moment. Times are hard, cost of living is very high, owing to the fact that energy prices has gone up, cost of accommodation has gone up. So many tariffs, electricity tariff has gone up, just like I said, energy, and so many other things, including the exchange rate that has actually begun to, a currency that has continued to have a free fall. And so to do that is like an attempt on the part of government to kind of like make the economy seems as if some progress have actually been made. What we really need, for me,
but in actual sense,
yes, we really need to work on our economy, improve our export base so we can actually attract more revenue and then see how we can actually finance our own development rather than living off the budget deficits that we're actually having at the moment.
Okay, talking about working on our economy to see how we can finance the economy, we actually talked about earlier, if you could remember, we talked about the proposed from 7.5% to 10% VAT. What do you make of that move? And really, because there's somehow, drag between, the Presidential Committee on Tax Reform and Fiscal Policy, Taiwo Dili, and we heard what the Finance Minister said. So what do you make of that move, and what do you think of the timing as well?
Okay, thank you very much. There's really nothing wrong about increasing our value-added tax, being a consumption tax. If you check across the ECOWAS sub-region, there are 8 of us within the African continent. Ours is one of the lowest, and our collection is also very low. In the spirit of trying to, make progress towards regional integration, which is the ultimate thing we're trying to do. You are aware of the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement that has actually been signed, which is intended to actually help the development of Africa. The idea of regional integration, which is contained in the Abuja Declaration, saying, look, members, for instance, the ECOWAS member states have to move towards a common custom union, and that's why you see that we now have what is now called the common external tariff, the implication of which is whichever part of the ECOWAS region you actually walk in, you ship in anything or bring it in, you are paying the same uniform tariffs on them. And these are efforts towards building us, driving us towards a common custom union, having a single currency, which has always been a uniform currency, which has always been a plan and the pipeline. It's also part of the agenda. So there is really nothing wrong moving towards it. Our current value-added tax to GDP is below the average of what ECOWAS countries are actually collecting. But the question remains, if you want to make us to align with what, because other member states, ours is one of the lowest, and you want to align it, you must also remember that the social safety net these countries have, we do not actually have it. And again, most of them, how many of us within the ECOWAS sub-region have got the kind of resources, natural resources we have? And so for them, in the absence of major revenue generating source for them, they feel VAT might actually be a good one because it's based on consumption. So it's important we begin to delineate this issue that yes, ours might be one of the lowest within the region, ours might be below the average of the continent itself. But you must also understand that, look, countries who have risen theirs higher is because they perhaps do not have any other major ways of actually generating revenue. Us, we've got our oil here, we've got other resources, and I think we
are we actually taking advantage of other resources? Because most of the times the focus is mostly on crude oil. We
yes,
don't really do much of solid mineral. You don't get to hear much from it, you know.
Well, solid minerals is another different. A lot of mining is going on, except some of them are going on in the informal sectors, and they are not recorded in the official statistics of government. But I can tell you that a lot of mining is going on in Nigeria, and that is an area where we can actually generate revenue for this country. So basically, we're saying there is nothing wrong with raising your value-added tax from 7.5 to 10%. But then the basis of the argument you're giving is also not correct. Two is that, look, the current economic climate we have in now, where cost of living is very high, I think it's the wrong timing to want to introduce such thing. Never minding the fact that the proposal on ground, which has not been affirmed to by the president, is expected to start in February 2025. But I also do not see us coming out of what we're in now by February 2025, because it will take a long time to get us out of it. Beyond that also, it was just in 2020 that government moved the value-added tax from 5% to 7.5%. And to now in 2024, barely 3 years thereabout, then say you want to increase it again, it doesn't really seem to work, because value-added tax, in fact, the 2017 national tax policy says that, look, tax should be long-term and it should be tenured, which means you don't just change them frequently, but it will take a longer period before you begin to make attempts to review them upward in the first place. So for me, the timing is very wrong. Really nothing wrong with it, but the timing is not
now still on
good
the
for
timing,
us.
because right now we are seeing a really huge squeeze when you talk about the consumer side. Now there's also a conversation about reintroduction of, or should I say introduction of a cyber levy. From 0.5% to 0.005%. It's minimal, but that actually shifts somehow burden to the consumer when you look at it.
I think your observation is very correct. Never minding they're actually bringing it down to what appears like an insignificant percentage of the revenue of companies. It still has a lot to do with it. And I will also advise that government begin to look away from using fiscal policy measures to drive development financing, and look at other areas where we can actually generate more money. Look at exports areas, because at the moment all we're hearing is so many kinds of reforms that is actually going on within the fiscal space, and it is not really good for our economy at the moment. Because at the end of the day, companies are the ones to pay, they are not generating revenue. Check their books. Consumers are the ones to pay, and the standard of living at the moment is actually not anything to write home about. Even the much talked about minimum wage, that is, I once said in your studio here that it is one that is already driven by, it is one that is taken over by inflation, even when they have not started implementation of it. And that, I don't think, is the right way to go as we speak.
You talked about this reform. You said it's good on paper, but in reality, what do you think could possibly go wrong?
Which of the policies right now?
I mean, the tax reform.
Oh, no, for us right now, the truth is, if you check the proposal, which government has also not come out to, but people have said from a sneak preview of what the committee has done, Taiwo Yedele's committee, is that they want to increase the VAT from 7.5 to 10% by 2025, and then increase it to 15%, which is trying to align it with what is obtainable across the ECOWAS sub-region by 2027. At the moment, like I said, it does not really fly. It sounds good on paper, but it's not going to work. There's going to be a challenge with the implementation of it. Taking that value-added tax is based on consumption. In other words, if you don't consume the items that are VATed, you are free from it. But if you check the list of exceptions, apart from educational material, basic foods, unprocessed one, talk about pharmaceutical chemicals and all the rest of them, including agricultural equipments, there are other things. A bottle of water, if you walk into a restaurant to buy it, you're going to be VATed on it. The challenge will be that states...
But he actually said it's not on essentials.
No,
And I think
those are not
bottled water
essentials.
should be, okay. A bottled water is part of non-essential?
Okay, you buy it on the street, but once you buy it from a restaurant, it's not part of. It's a bottled water.
Oh, yeah.
It's a bottled water. So wine and the rest of them, they look like luxury items, but there are items you categorize as luxury that are basic for people. And it also depends on who is actually calling it a basic item, a non-essential items. So the point of the matter is it is imperative for us to begin to review the list of exemptions, the exemption list that value-added tax is actually not actually acting upon. So we can include more items into it, remove the ones that are not necessary to truly reflect the true situation of the country. But one challenge I see in it is that the proposal on ground says they are going to take away the consumption taxes and then introduce and increase the value-added tax from 5%. Remember, the value-added tax is shared across the 3 tiers of government. At the moment, government takes the lowest percentage of it. In fact, federal government takes 15%, state take 50%, local government take 35%. So it sounds good on paper when you say you want to increase it because it will increase the revenue from VAT that is going to the state and local government. So subnationals will actually go on. But the challenge will be consumption tax is one that is collected at the state level. So if you walk into a restaurant and eat, you see FIRS, you see that there is a value-added tax, you see there is a consumption tax. It means you are going to be paying not only the 7.5%, you're not going to be paying the 10%, but you're also going to be paying the consumption tax on anything you then consume, which is not within the exemption list. And the state governments, that is where they generate the bulk of their revenue. So I see a conflict here between the states having to cede their consumption tax just because federal government is going to increase the value-added tax by some 2.5%. That will also be, for me, a major area of conflict between the 3 tiers of government in implementation
but
of the new
much
proposal.
as we talk about generating more income or generating revenues,
Yeah.
I think part of the conversation should also include the issue of cost of governance. Then how do we actually appropriate this money?
The cost
Shouldn't
of
it-
governance.
Yeah, cost of governance.
Well, it has always been a subject of conversation. At the moment, people say, and it's very correct, that the cost of governance is very high. The way around it is not begin to look for extra money and burden citizens and companies who are also struggling to become competitive and be able to produce and sell. It is about government also reducing the cost of governance itself. So look inwards and begin to see where do we have excesses. This idea of one government official having essay 1, essay on domestic, essay on political affairs, essay on this one, essay on that one. These are the things that are putting pressure on the public resources. So let's go away beyond, let's change the focus from saying, let's generate more revenue to finance governance. Let us see how we can also reduce the cost of governance itself by looking inwards and cutting off the excesses that are actually increasing the cost of governance itself. That's the approach I think government needs to actually follow in this particular agenda.
Chris Kaka, it's always been a pleasure having you in the program.